The transport shuttle descended through the atmospheric shield surrounding Proxima 7, carrying the newest batch of cadets to the Galactic Defense Academy. Inside the cabin, Taman pressed his face against the viewport, watching the massive orbital station grow larger. The structure was enormous, easily the size of a small city, with training facilities that could simulate any environment in the known galaxy. He sat between two other humans. On his left was Hana, a woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind when it came to weapon systems. On his right was Yuri, their squad's medical specialist who could assess injuries with a single glance. They were 3 of only 50 cadets selected this cycle from thousands of applicants across hundreds of worlds. Nervous? Hana asked, not looking away from her datapad where she studied weapon schematics. Taman shrugged. Just excited. This is what we trained for. Across the aisle, a massive figure shifted in a reinforced seat. Bronx, a Gorath from the heavy gravity world of Tor 5, had skin like gray stone and muscles that could bend steel. He watched the humans with curiosity. In his culture, beings as small and soft as humans were considered fragile. He wondered how they had even qualified for the academy. Near the front of the shuttle, Kirill preened his blue-silver feathers. The Skyrothi came from a world of floating cities and endless skies. His people were natural flyers with hollow bones and incredible reflexes. He had scored highest in the entrance exams and knew it. Several other cadets had already started treating him like the unofficial leader of their class. The shuttle docked with a metallic clang. The door hissed open and a wall of sound hit them. Hundreds of cadets from previous cycles trained in the vast hangar beyond. Their instructors barking orders in a dozen different languages. The universal translator implants in each cadet's ear handled the conversion automatically. Move. Move, move. A Krellian instructor appeared in the doorway. He had 4 muscular arms, each ending in 3-fingered hands. His exoskeleton was decorated with scars from real combat. This was Instructor Velthros, and his reputation preceded him. He was the hardest instructor in the academy, and he had never given a perfect score to any cadet in 30 years of teaching. The cadets scrambled out of the shuttle, forming ragged lines in the hangar. Taman found himself standing between a gelatinous Mordrani who barely held a humanoid shape and a crystalline Shardian whose body chimed softly with each movement. Veltros paced in front of them, his forearms clasped behind his back. You think you are special? You think because you passed the entrance exams that you are warriors? He stopped and swept his gaze across them. You are wrong. You are nothing. Soft, weak, unprepared. His eyes lingered on the 3 humans. Especially you, humans, no claws, no venom, no armored hide, no natural weapons at all. Your species only joined the galactic community 2 generations ago. What makes you think you can survive here? Taman felt the stares of other cadets. He kept his face neutral. He had heard this before, growing up on a colony world where humans were the newest and least impressive species around. But, Veltros continued, the Academy does not care about what you were born with. We care about what you can become. For the next 6 months, you will train harder than you have ever trained in your lives. You will learn to fight in zero gravity and crushing gravity. You will learn to survive in desert heat and Arctic cold. You will learn that your body is a weapon, and everything around you is a tool. The cadets were divided into squads of 10. Taman, Hana, and Yuri ended up in Squad 7, along with Kirill, Bronx, and 5 others. Over the next 3 weeks, they trained together. They ran obstacle courses designed for species with different physiologies. They studied tactics and strategy. They learned hand-to-hand combat, which was awkward when your squad members ranged from Yuri's 5-foot frame to Bronx's 8-foot bulk. Taman proved to be average at most things. His running speed was middle of the pack. His strength was unremarkable compared to species evolved for combat. But the instructors noticed something else. During equipment training, when other cadets struggled to understand the alien weapon systems, Taman adapted quickly. When a training rifle jammed, others called for help. Taman took it apart, found the problem, and fixed it. You have a talent for improvisation, Instructor Veltros noted during one session, watching Taman repair a broken training drone using parts from 2 other broken drones. Growing up on a colony world, Taman explained, we didn't have much. When something broke, you couldn't just order a replacement. You fixed it with what you had. Veltros filed that observation away. The weeks passed. Squad 7 grew closer, learning to work with each other's strengths and weaknesses. Kirill was the fastest and had the best aim from a distance. Bronx was the immovable wall that could take hits that would kill others. Hana knew every weapon system in the galactic arsenal. Yuri could keep them all alive when injuries happened. Taman became the squad's problem solver, the one they called when standard solutions did not work. Then, at the end of the third week, Instructor Veltros gathered all 50 cadets in the main briefing hall. "Your midterm practical examination begins in 3 days," he announced. "The test is simple. You will be dropped onto a simulated hostile world. You will have no equipment, no weapons, no supplies, nothing but the clothes you are wearing." The hall erupted in confused murmurs. Several cadets protested immediately. How were they supposed to fight without weapons? Veltros held up one hand and silence fell. "You will survive for 48 hours. During that time, training drones will hunt you. You must craft weapons from your environment to defend yourselves. You must find food and water. You must reach the extraction point before time expires." "This is impossible," Kirill said, his feathers ruffling with agitation. "We are trained to use weapons, not make them from nothing." "Then you will fail," Veltros said simply. "In real combat, you will not always have your equipment. Ships crash. Supplies run out. Weapons break. A true warrior survives anyway. A true warrior improvises." He touched a control, and a hologram of the testing ground appeared above them. Dense jungle, rocky mountains, rivers, toxic plants, and dangerous wildlife. You will be scattered across 100 square kilometers. You may work alone or in groups, that is your choice. But remember, only cadets who demonstrate combat capability will pass. That night, Squad 7 gathered in their barracks. Several squad members were panicking. The Shardian, whose crystalline body was naturally sharp but fragile, worried about crafting weapons without breaking himself. The Mordrani feared dehydration in any environment that wasn't moisture-rich. "What do humans do in situations like this?" Bronx asked, looking at the 3 humans. Hana checked her datapad, pulling up information about the testing ground's ecosystem. "We adapt. We figure it out." Yuri was already making notes about which plants might be edible or medicinal based on the briefing data. Taman sat quietly, his mind already working through possibilities. Jungle meant vines for cordage. Rocky areas meant sharp stones. Trees meant wood for spears or clubs. Even toxic plants could be useful if you were careful. "Taman?" Hana noticed his distant expression. "You okay?" He smiled slightly. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" "About what I can make." 3 days later, the transport ships waited. Taman stood in line with the others, wearing only a simple uniform and boots. No tools. No weapons, nothing. But his mind was already full of designs, possibilities, and plans. While other cadets worried about finding one weapon, Taman was already thinking about which one he should make first. The drop pod shook violently as it entered the atmosphere. Taman gripped the safety harness, watching through the small viewport as the ground rushed up to meet him. The pod's computer counted down the final seconds before impact. 3, 2, 1. The landing jets fired, and the pod slammed into the ground hard enough to rattle his teeth. The harness released automatically, and the door blew open with a hiss of compressed air. Humid jungle air rushed in, thick with the smell of vegetation and damp earth. Taman stepped out onto soft ground covered in moss and fallen leaves. Massive trees stretched overhead, their canopy blocking most of the sunlight. Vines hung everywhere. Strange bird-like creatures called from the branches. In the distance, he heard running water. He touched the communicator implant behind his ear. "Squad 7, sound off." Static crackled, then Hana's voice came through. "This is Hana. Landed in a rocky area, looks like foothills. I can see mountains to the north. Yuri here. I'm near a river. Lots of plant life." One by one, the squad checked in. They were scattered, but all within a few kilometers of each other. The plan was to meet up eventually, but first everyone needed to secure basic weapons. "Good luck, everyone," Taman said. "Stay safe. Check in every 2 hours." He surveyed his landing zone more carefully. The jungle was dense but not impassable. His boots squelched in the wet ground. Perfect. Wet meant clay deposits nearby. Clay could be useful, but first he needed a basic weapon, something for defense. Taman moved through the undergrowth looking for the right kind of stone. Sedimentary rock would crumble. Granite was too hard to work without tools. He needed something in between. After 10 minutes of searching, he found what he was looking for. A piece of flint-like stone jutting from the exposed roots of a massive tree. He pulled it free and tested its weight. Good size. He looked around for something to strike it with and found a harder rock nearby. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Taman began the ancient process of napping, striking the flint at precise angles to create sharp edges. Chip, chip, chip. Flakes of stone fell away. His hands moved with practiced confidence. His father had taught him this on the colony world when Taman was 8 years old. "You never know when old skills will save your life," his father had said. 20 minutes later, he had a crude but functional knife blade, sharp enough to cut. Now he needed a handle. Taman found a straight branch, stripped the bark, and split one end with the knife itself. He wedged the stone blade into the split, then bound it tightly with thin vines stripped from a nearby plant. Weapon number 1 complete. But Taman did not stop. While other cadets would celebrate finding a single weapon, he was just getting started. He moved toward the sound of running water, gathering materials as he went. Long straight branches, vines of different thicknesses, feathers from a dead bird analog he found, a patch of resin oozing from a tree wound, natural adhesive. At the stream he found smooth stones perfect for a sling. He also spotted something else, obsidian-like volcanic glass in the stream bed, black and razor-sharp. Jackpot. Taman worked methodically. He crafted a spear using a long branch, the stone knife to sharpen the tip, and fire hardening the point over a small flame he made with friction. Weapon number 2. He made a second knife from the volcanic glass. Weapon number 3. A sling from plant fiber cordage and a leather-like strip of bark. Weapon number 4. The sun moved across the sky. Taman barely noticed. His hands stayed busy, throwing spikes from sharpened pieces of the volcanic glass wrapped at one end for grip. Weapons 5 through 10. A club from a heavy branch with sharp stones embedded in the striking end, bound with resin and vine. Weapon 11. Across the testing ground, Kirill landed in an area of scattered trees and tall grass. He immediately took to the air, his wings carrying him above the ground to scout. From above, he spotted a stand of trees with straight branches. He landed and tried to break a branch free. The wood was tougher than it looked. After struggling for several minutes, he managed to snap off a piece. It was not very straight, and one end was splintered, but it would have to do. Kirill tried to sharpen the end using a rock, but the rock crumbled. He tried another rock. This one was harder, and after 20 frustrating minutes, he had managed to create something resembling a point on the stick. Weapon number 1 complete. Kirill felt proud of himself. He had a spear. That would be enough to fight the training drones. Meanwhile, Bronx had landed in a boulder field. The massive Gorath stood among rocks of various sizes, trying to figure out how to turn them into weapons. He picked up a stone the size of his head and tried to break it against another rock. The stone did not break. Bronx tried again, harder. The stone chipped slightly. He tried again and again, his patience wearing thin. Finally, after an hour of effort, he managed to break the stone into 2 pieces. One piece had a somewhat sharp edge. Weapon number 1 complete. Bronx hefted his rock blade, satisfied. His natural strength meant he did not need fancy weapons anyway. Back in the jungle, Taman had constructed a bow. The wood was not perfect. He would have preferred aged wood, properly cured, but he found a branch with the right flexibility. He strung it with braided plant fibers and tested the draw. It would work for a dozen shots, maybe 2 dozen, before the string broke. He made arrows next, fletching them with the feathers he had collected, using thin, straight sticks and sharpening the tips. He made 12 arrows. Each arrow was a separate weapon in his count. His weapon total was now at 23. He found a pool of stagnant water covered in algae. Testing carefully with a stick, he discovered the algae was toxic. It killed a small insect within seconds. Taman carefully collected some of the toxic algae and stored it in a makeshift container made from a hollow piece of wood sealed with resin. This could coat his arrow tips and blades. Not deadly to most species, but it would hurt and slow down targets. The day wore on. Taman built traps next, snares made from vine that would catch limbs, tripwires connected to sharpened stakes, a pit trap covered with branches and leaves with sharpened sticks at the bottom. Each trap counted as a weapon in his mind. That brought his total to 31. At the Academy observation deck, Instructor Veltros and his staff watched holographic displays showing each cadet's progress. Biomonitors tracked their locations and vital signs. Cameras hidden throughout the test zone provided visual feeds. Kirill has fashioned a spear, one instructor reported. Crude but functional. Bronx has a stone blade, another added. Most cadets are struggling, Veltros observed. The Shardian managed to break off a piece of her own body to use as a blade, but she is injured now. The Mordrani is focusing on finding water and has no weapon yet. What about the humans? Asked Shira, a crystalline instructor. The technician pulled up 3 feeds. Hana has created a spear and a knife. She is doing well. Yuri has crafted a knife and is gathering medicinal plants, smart, focusing on her specialty. And Taemin? The feed showed Taemin working on what appeared to be a net made from woven vines. A pile of finished weapons lay nearby, neatly organized. Veltros leaned forward. How many weapons does he have? The technician checked the count, then checked again, certain there was an error. According to our assessment, 33 weapons and traps, sir. Silence fell over the observation deck. That cannot be correct, Shira said. He has been on the ground for less than 8 hours. They watched the feed as Taemin completed the net, tested its strength and added it to his collection. 34 Veltros felt something unfamiliar. Surprise. In 30 years of running this test, he had never seen anything like this. Most cadets were celebrating if they managed to create 1 functional weapon in the first day. This human had created 34 and showed no signs of stopping. Pull up his complete footage, Veltros ordered. From the moment he landed, they watched in fast forward as Taemin moved through the jungle with purpose. There was no hesitation, no wasted movement. He looked at a stick and saw a spear. He looked at vines and saw rope, nets, and traps. He looked at stones and saw knives, clubs, and projectiles. He sees the jungle differently than the others, Shira observed quietly. No, Veltros corrected. He sees it the way it actually is. The others look at a jungle. He looks at an armory. As the first day ended and night fell over the testing ground, the cadets made camps. Most huddled near their single weapon, nervous about the darkness and the promise of training drones that would begin hunting them tomorrow. Taemin sat comfortably in a small clearing, surrounded by his arsenal of 35 weapons. He was already planning what to build tomorrow. He had seen some interesting materials near the stream. And there was that dead tree that would have very dry wood inside, perfect for certain types of traps. He smiled slightly as he fell asleep. This was just the beginning. The morning sun filtered through the jungle canopy as Taemin woke to the sound of distant thunder. Not weather, the training drones were activating. He could hear their repulsor engines humming in the distance, along with weapons fire and the shouts of startled cadets. The test's second phase had begun. Taemin gathered his weapons, distributing them across his body. Knives at his belt, bow across his back, arrows in a quiver made from woven bark, several throwing spikes tucked into straps he had fashioned from his torn uniform sleeves. The spear in his dominant hand, but he left most of his weapons cached in the clearing hidden under brush. 35 weapons were too many to carry. He would return for them if needed. He moved through the jungle toward higher ground where he would have a better view. As he climbed, he gathered more materials. A particularly straight branch that would make an excellent javelin. Some bright red berries that might be toxic. He carefully stored them for testing later. A patch of sticky sap oozing from a wounded tree. More adhesive. His communicator crackled. Taemin. It was Kirill, and the Skyrathi sounded panicked. Drone spotted near my position. My spear broke on its armor. Stay mobile, Taemin replied calmly. Use your flight advantage. Where are you? Kirill transmitted his coordinates. Taemin was about 1 kilometer away. Heading to you now. Stay alive. At the Academy observation deck, more instructors had gathered to watch the human cadet who had somehow created 35 weapons in less than a day. Overnight, while he slept, his weapon count had been the talk of the entire teaching staff. Perhaps he is cheating somehow, suggested an insectoid instructor with compound eyes. Hidden tools? A supply cache? Veltros shook his four-armed body in the Krellian equivalent of a head shake. We have watched every moment of footage. He arrived with nothing, like all the others. He simply makes weapons from everything he touches. They watched now as Taemin encountered a training drone. The machine was roughly humanoid in shape, made of dark metal, with optical sensors glowing red. It carried a non-lethal pulse weapon, designed to stun cadets, simulating real combat without causing permanent injury. The drone detected Taemin and raised its weapon. Most cadets would panic, try to flee, or charge with their single weapon. Taman did something different. He dropped low and rolled behind a tree as the pulse blast scorched the air where he had been standing. While the drone recalculated and moved to flank him, Taman was already moving. He grabbed a weighted net from his belt, one of the weapons he had brought with him, and threw it in a wide arc. The net spread perfectly, wrapping around the drone's upper body and weapon arm. The machine tried to break free, servos whining with effort. Taman did not give it time. He rushed forward with his spear and drove it into the gap between the drone's chest plate and hip joint, a weak point. The spear tip pierced through wiring. The drone sparked and went still, disabled. Total time from first contact to victory, 12 seconds. The instructors watching the feed sat in stunned silence. "Analyze that," Velthros ordered. The technician replayed the footage in slow motion. He knew the drone's weak points. The net disabled its mobility and weapon targeting. The spear strike was precise. He aimed for the vulnerable joint structure. But how did he know? Shira asked. This is his first encounter with a combat drone in a field environment. Look, Velthros pointed at an earlier part of the footage. Yesterday, when he was building weapons near his landing site, there was a deactivated marker drone on the ground, used for boundary marking. He examined it for several minutes. They watched as Taman had studied the marker drone, running his hands over its construction, noting the joint structures, the panel gaps, the sensor placement. He had been learning its anatomy. He treats everything as information, Velthros said quietly. He does not just make weapons, he studies his enemy. But they were not prepared for what came next. Taman knelt beside the disabled training drone and began taking it apart. Using his stone knife, he pried open access panels and removed components. Optical sensors, a section of metal plating, wiring that could serve as strong cordage, a power cell that still held a charge. He is looting the drone, an instructor observed, somewhat unnecessarily. Taman fashioned new weapons from the parts. The metal plating became knife blades, far superior to his stone ones. The wiring became unbreakable cordage for traps. The optical sensor could be used as a signaling device. His weapon count jumped from 35 to 42. Across the test zone, other cadets were having less success. Kirill's replacement weapon, a second spear he had hastily made, shattered against another drone's armor. He took a pulse blast to the wing and crashed into the undergrowth, stunned but alive. The drone advanced to finish the scenario. Failure meant extraction and a failing grade. Then Taman emerged from the jungle, moving fast. He had heard Kirill's distress call and tracked the sounds of combat. Now he saw his squad mate down and the drone closing in. Without hesitation, Taman grabbed one of his throwing spikes and hurled it. The sharp piece of volcanic glass flew true, striking the drone's optical sensor. The machine turned toward this new threat. Taman already had his bow drawn. He released an arrow that whistled through the air and struck the drone's weapon arm joint. The machine staggered. A second arrow hit the hip joint. A third struck the neck joint between head and body. The drone collapsed, critical systems damaged. Kirill looked up from the ground, his feathers muddy and askew. You saved me. Squad. Takes care of squad, Taman replied, offering a hand to help the Skyrathi to his feet. Can you fly? Kirill tested his wings and winced. Not well. That pulse blast hurt. Then we move on foot together. Taman handed Kirill two weapons from his personal arsenal, a knife and a shorter spear designed for close combat. Here. These are better than what you had. Kirill stared at the weapons. They were well-made, functional, deadly. You made these? Yesterday. Come on, we should find the others. As they moved through the jungle together, Kirill could not stop stealing glances at the human. Taman moved through the environment like he was born to it, constantly observing, constantly gathering. He stopped to collect a particular type of vine. He paused to examine a bug crawling on a tree, then carefully caught it and stored it in a container. Apparently even insects were useful. How do you do it? Kirill finally asked. The weapons. You make it look easy. Taman considered the question as they walked. On my colony world, we had limited resources. Ships came only twice a year with supplies. If something broke, you could not just buy a new one. You had to fix it or make do with something else. But these are weapons, not broken tools. A weapon is just a tool for combat, Taemin said. Same principles apply. Look at this jungle. What do you see? Kirill looked around. Trees, plants, rocks, dangers. I see materials. That vine has fibers strong enough for rope. Those rocks have different hardness levels, some for cutting, some for striking. That tree bark peels in strips perfect for cordage. The resin is adhesive. The bamboo-like plants are hollow. They can hold water or be cut into tubes for blow darts. Blow darts? Kirill's head spun. You can make blow darts? I already made 3 of them. They are back at my cache. Taemin paused to collect some more of the toxic algae from a stagnant pool. Everything is a resource. You just have to know how to use it. They found Hana next. She had successfully fought off 1 drone but was pinned down by 2 more. Taemin assessed the situation quickly, then handed several weapons to Kirill. When I engage, you flank from the right. Use the spear. Aim for the joints like I showed you. The coordinated attack was brutally efficient. Taemin drew the drone's attention with arrow fire, while Kirill swept in from the side. Together they disabled both machines in under 30 seconds. Hana emerged from cover, slightly singed but grinning. About time you showed up. Nice to see you too, Taemin replied. You okay? Better now. She looked at the disabled drones. You have a thing for taking these apart, right? Already ahead of you. Taemin was kneeling beside the first drone, removing components. His weapon count hit 47. At the observation deck, the teaching staff had grown from a handful to nearly 20 instructors, all watching the human work. Word had spread through the academy. Even off-duty staff were arriving to see the footage. Experienced. The need to revise his understanding of a species. I have trained thousands of cadets. I have taught Krellians with 4 arms who could wield 4 weapons simultaneously. I have taught Gorath with stone skin who barely needed weapons. I have taught species with natural venom, with psionic abilities, with camouflage. He gestured at the screen showing Taemin teaching Kirill how to properly strike a drone's weak points. But I have never seen this. Humans have no natural weapons. They are not the strongest or fastest. They have no armor, no venom, no claws. Yet somehow, Shira finished his thought, they may be the most dangerous species in this kind of scenario. Another instructor, a veteran of actual combat, spoke up. In warfare, we call this force multiplication. 1 soldier with the right knowledge and resources becomes equivalent to many soldiers. But I have never seen a single being multiply force like this human does. He arms himself, then arms others, then teaches them to be more effective. On screen, Taemin, Hana, and Kirill were moving toward Yuri's last known position now. The communicator implants in every cadet's ear crackled to life simultaneously. Instructor Velthros's voice came through, calm, but commanding. Attention all cadets. The final phase of your examination begins now. You have 12 hours to reach the extraction point at coordinates uploaded to your biomonitors. However, the advanced combat drones have been activated. They will hunt you. Work together or work alone. That choice is yours. Good luck. The transmission ended. Taemin checked his biomonitor and saw the extraction point marked on his mental, now as 15 kilometers northeast through the densest part of the jungle and across a river valley. Around him, Squad 7 had regrouped. Hana checked her weapons, a spear and 2 knives she had made, plus an improved knife Taemin had given her from drone parts. Yuri carried a staff and a blade, along with a pouch full of medicinal plants she had gathered. Kirill gripped his spear, wings still sore but functional. They had found 3 other squad members during their journey, and Taemin had armed each of them with weapons from his growing arsenal, but they were missing Bronx and 2 others. We cannot. Wait, Hana said, reading the concern on Taemin's face. 12 hours, 15 kilometers, with combat drones hunting us. Taemin nodded slowly. She was right. But the idea of leaving squad members behind did not sit well with him. His communicator crackled. This is Bronx. I am pinned down. 3 drones. My weapon broke. The coordinates showed Bronx was 2 kilometers south, the wrong direction from extraction. We have to go. Hana insisted. The mission is to pass the test, Taemin interrupted. But we are a squad. We do not leave people behind. He turned to the others. Fast march to Bronx's position, combat formation. Kirill, you scout from above when we get close. Everyone else stay sharp. They moved through the jungle at a steady pace. Taemin led, reading the terrain, choosing paths that provided cover. He had spent 2 days learning this environment, and now it paid off. He knew where the ground was soft, where the sight lines were clear, where ambush points lurked. 20 minutes later, they heard pulse weapon fire. Kirill flew up to reconnoiter and returned quickly. Bronx is in a ravine. 3 drones have him surrounded. He is using a large rock as a shield, but he has no weapon. Taemin assessed the situation quickly. Hana, Yuri, take positions on the ravine's east side. Kirill, you and the others take the west. When I engage from the north, you all attack from your positions. Focus fire, 1 drone at a time. You are going to take the frontal assault? Hana asked. That is the most dangerous position. Taemin smiled and patted the bow on his back. I have the range advantage, trust me. He moved into position, staying low and quiet. Below in the ravine, Bronx crouched behind his makeshift shield. The massive Goroth's stone-like skin was scorched in several places from pulse blasts. The 3 drones advanced slowly, their weapons charged and ready. Taemin drew his bow, knocked an arrow coated with toxic algae, and took aim. The angle was difficult. Downward shot, moving target, wind from the valley. He compensated mentally, drawing on hours of practice with this makeshift weapon. He released. The arrow flew true and struck the first drone's optical sensor cluster. The machine staggered, temporarily blinded. Before the other drones could locate him, Taemin had fired twice more. 1 arrow hit the second drone's weapon arm. The 3rd arrow struck the 3rd drone's leg joint. Now, he shouted. The squad attacked from 3 sides. Hana's thrown spear caught the blinded drone in the chest, piercing a critical power conduit. Kirill dove from above, his reinforced talons raking across another drone's sensor housing. Yuri and the others swarmed the 3rd drone with coordinated strikes at its joints. In 15 seconds, all 3 drones were disabled. Bronx emerged from behind his rock shield, looking at the squad with something like awe. You came back for me. Of course we did, Taemin replied, already stripping parts from the disabled drones. Squad 7 sticks together. He handed Bronx a heavy club he had made earlier, one designed specifically for the Goroth's strength. The handle was thick, the head made from drone plating reinforced with stone. In Bronx's powerful hands, it would be devastating. This is for me? Bronx asked, testing the weapon's weight. Made it yesterday. Figured you would need something that matched your strength. The Goroth's eyes, usually hard and unemotional, softened slightly. In his culture, weapons were often ceremonial gifts that symbolized trust and respect. They continued toward the extraction point. More drones attacked. More cadets' distress calls came through the communicators. Each time, Taemin made a decision. Help if they could reach the cadet in time, or keep moving if the detour was too costly. They rescued 4 more cadets from other squads. Taemin armed each of them. His weapon cache back at his original landing site was now 15 kilometers away and effectively abandoned, but it did not matter. He made new weapons as they traveled, and more importantly, he taught the others how to make their own. Why are you doing this? One rescued cadet asked, a reptilian Scaros who had been certain she would fail the test. We are competing. Helping others reduces your own chance of passing. Taemin looked at her while fashioning a new spear from materials gathered along the march. We are cadets of the Galactic Defense Academy. Someday we will fight real enemies together. I would rather everyone pass than succeed alone. At the Academy observation deck, nearly every instructor and senior cadet was now watching. What had started as curiosity about one exceptional human had become something larger, a demonstration of philosophy in action. Veltro stood at the center of the viewing room, his forearms crossed. He is teaching them, he said quietly. Shira moved beside him, her crystalline body chiming softly. Not just weapons technique. He is teaching them to think like he thinks. to see resources everywhere. On screen, the group of rescued cadets, now 15 strong, were learning to work together. Chiral coordinated aerial reconnaissance. Bronx served as the heavy striker. Hana managed weapon distribution. Yuri handled injuries and exhaustion. Others took roles based on their natural abilities. And Taemin orchestrated it all, not by commanding but by enabling. He identified each person's strengths and gave them tools to maximize those strengths. They reached the river valley by mid-afternoon. The extraction point was visible on the opposite bank, a cleared landing zone where transport ships would arrive. But between them and safety was 200 meters of open ground. And waiting in that open ground was the final test. A heavy combat drone, 3 times the size of the standard units, stood sentinel near the extraction point. Its armor was thicker, its weapons more powerful, and its sensor arrays more sophisticated. This was the scenario's final challenge, the guardian that would test everything the cadets had learned. Several other cadets from different squads had already tried to get past it. Their unconscious bodies lay scattered in the clearing, stunned by pulse weapons waiting for medical evacuation. They had failed. "We cannot fight that," Kirill said, his feathers pressed flat in a display of fear. "Look at it. Our weapons will not even scratch its armor." "Not individually," Taemin agreed, "but together with the right tactics." He looked at the 15 cadets who had gathered around him, plus another dozen from other squads who had arrived and joined their group. Nearly 30 cadets total, species from a dozen different worlds, each with different abilities. Taemin began explaining his plan. It was complex. It required precise timing. It required everyone to trust each other and their makeshift weapons. But as he spoke, drawing diagrams in the dirt, the cadets began to understand. This human was not just good at making weapons. He was good at turning people into weapons. "This is insane," Hana said when he finished explaining. But she was smiling. "I love it. Everyone understand their role?" Taemin asked. Nods all around. Even the cadets who had been terrified minutes ago now showed determination. Taemin had given them something more valuable than weapons. He had given them a plan and the confidence to execute it. "All right," Taemin said, checking his bow one last time. "Let us show this drone what happens when you corner a group of desperate, creative, armed cadets." He looked at his makeshift army and felt pride. They were not Squad 7 anymore. They were something bigger. "For the Academy," Bronx roared, raising his massive club. "For the Academy," the others echoed. And they charged. The observation deck fell completely silent as every instructor leaned forward to watch. This would either be the most spectacular failure or the most impressive victory they had ever witnessed. Veltros found himself hoping for the latter. The human had earned that much. The heavy combat drone sensors tracked 30 cadets emerging from the jungle tree line. Its threat assessment protocols activated, analyzing each target. Combat capability minimal. Weapons primitive improvised tools. Threat level low. It was about to revise that assessment. The attack came in waves exactly as Taemin had planned. First, Kirill and 2 other flying species took to the air, drawing the drone's attention upward. The machine's weapons tracked them, firing pulse blasts that the flyers dodged with practiced rolls. While the drone looked up, Bronx charged from ground level. The massive Gorath's footsteps shook the earth. The drone swiveled to face this new threat, but Bronx did not attack. He simply raised a massive shield, woven from branches and reinforced with drone plating, and planted himself like a wall. Pulse blasts hammered into the shield. Bronx's arms shook with the impact, but he held firm. Behind him, Hana and 6 others sprinted forward carrying nets, not to capture the drone but to limit its mobility. They threw in coordinated sequence, tangling the drone's legs and weapon arms. The machine stumbled, servos whining as it tried to break free. That was when Yuri and the support group made their move. They had spent the last hour gathering explosive materials. The volatile sap from certain trees, rocks that sparked when struck together, sealed containers that would rupture under pressure. It was not military-grade explosives, but it did not need to be. Small charges detonated around the drone's feet, not to damage it, but to create smoke and confusion. The machine's sensors scrambled, trying to filter through the interference. Taemin's arrow flew through the smoke, guided by instinct and calculation. It struck the drone's primary optical sensor, shattering the lens. A second arrow hit the backup sensor. A third hit the tertiary sensor mounted on the machine's shoulder. Blinded, the heavy drone fired randomly. The cadets had already scattered to positions Tae-min had marked out, areas of cover, angles that made friendly fire impossible. Now came the hardest part. The drone's armor was too thick for their improvised weapons to penetrate. But armor had seams, joints, cooling vents. Tae-min had studied the smaller drones. This larger version would have the same basic weaknesses, just better protected. Pressure points, he shouted. Focus on the joints. The coordinated assault was beautiful in its efficiency. Species that could not fight worth anything alone became deadly in combination. The Skaros reptilian's flexible body let her slide underneath the drone to strike at ankle joints. Kirill dove from above to rake talons across neck joints. Bronx's powerful strikes hammered at hip joints, and Tae-min directed it all, calling targets, adjusting tactics as the drone adapted to their attacks. The battle lasted 7 minutes. To the cadets, it felt like hours. To the instructors watching from the observation deck, it looked like a carefully orchestrated dance of destruction. Finally, Bronx's club, reinforced with sharp stones and drone plating, came down on the heavy drone's central processor housing. The blow dented the armor. A second strike cracked it. The third blow shattered through. The massive machine shuddered, sparked, and collapsed. For a moment, there was only silence in the clearing. Then cheering erupted. 30 cadets from a dozen species celebrated together, exhausted, battered, but victorious. Several hugged. Others performed victory displays from their respective cultures. Bronx lifted Tae-min onto his massive shoulders, and the human laughed, actual joy in the sound. At the Academy observation deck, the silence stretched longer. 20 instructors stared at screens showing impossible achievement after impossible achievement. Veltros finally spoke, his voice quiet with respect. Download every second of footage from this test. This will be studied for years. The transport ships arrived at the extraction point. Medical teams examined the unconscious cadets who had failed earlier and confirmed they would be fine. Stunned, not seriously injured. The successful cadets boarded the transports, still talking excitedly about the battle. Tae-min sat quietly during the return flight, finally allowing himself to feel the exhaustion. His hands were covered in small cuts and blisters from 2 days of constant crafting. His uniform was torn and stained. He had not slept more than a few hours, but he had kept his squad alive. More than that, he had helped nearly 30 cadets pass a test many had been certain they would fail. Hana sat beside him. You know they are going to want to understand how you did all that. I just made weapons, Tae-min replied with a slight smile. 47 weapons, Kirill corrected from across the aisle. He had counted. Plus the modifications you made to other cadets' weapons, plus the tactical plans, plus teaching all of us your techniques. 47 weapons before most of us found one, Bronx added, his gravelly voice holding obvious respect. The next day, all cadets assembled in the main briefing hall. They wore fresh uniforms, their injuries treated. The atmosphere was different than 3 days ago. They had survived something together. That created bonds. Instructor Veltros stood at the front, his forearms gesturing to the screens behind him. All cadets passed the practical examination, he announced. Surprised murmurs rippled through the hall. Usually at least a quarter failed this test. However, passing and excelling are different things. He touched a control, and footage appeared on the screens. The cadets watched themselves in the jungle, struggling to create that first weapon. They saw Kirill's frustration with his breaking spear. They saw Bronx's difficulty chipping stone. They saw others fumbling with unfamiliar techniques. Then the footage switched to Tae-min. They watched him move through the jungle like he owned it, crafting weapon after weapon with fluid efficiency. I have been an instructor at this academy for 30 cycles, Veltros said. I have trained thousands of cadets from hundreds of species. I have taught Krellians with 4 arms who could wield multiple weapons simultaneously. I have taught Gorath with natural armor that makes them nearly invulnerable. I have taught Skyrathi who fly. Species with venom, with camouflage, with psionic abilities. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the assembly. And in all that time I have believed that species with natural advantages had inherent superiority in combat scenarios. Another pause. I was wrong. The hall was completely silent now. Humans, Veltros continued, have no claws. No venom, no armored hide, no wings, no natural weapons of any kind. By every measure we use to judge combat species, they should be among the weakest. He gestured at the screen showing Tai-Min's weapon count climbing higher and higher. Yet when I told Cadet Tai-Min to improvise a weapon, he had 47 prepared before most of you found one. Why? The question hung in the air. Because, Veltros answered his own question, humans evolved differently. Most species evolve their weapons, claws, fangs, venom, armor. These are part of their biology. But humans evolved something more dangerous. They evolved the ability to make their weapons. More footage played, this time showing Earth's history, downloaded from galactic databases. Stone tools from 2 million years ago, spears, bows, bronze, iron, steel, gunpowder, nuclear weapons. Each advancement came faster than the last. Where the Gorath see a rock, humans see a hammer, a knife, a projectile, a building material, 100 possibilities, Veltros explained. Where the Skyrathi see a jungle, humans see an armory. Every environment becomes a resource. Every problem becomes a puzzle with a solution that can be crafted. He showed footage of Tai-Min teaching other cadets during the test. More importantly, humans share this knowledge freely. Cadet Tai-Min could have kept his weapons and techniques for himself. He could have passed the test easily alone. Instead, he armed others. He taught others. He turned a group of struggling individuals into an effective fighting force. Shira stepped forward, her crystalline body catching the light. This test was designed to push cadets to their limits, to see who could survive with nothing but their natural abilities and creativity. We expected most to barely pass. We expected a few to excel. We did not expect this. She gestured to the footage of the final battle against the heavy combat drone. 30 cadets from 12 species working in perfect coordination, each using weapons and tactics taught by one human who saw potential in everyone. Veltros took control again. There is a lesson here for all of you. Natural advantages are useful. The Gorath's strength is real. The Skyrathi's flight is real. But adaptability, the ability to look at any situation and create a solution, that is the ultimate advantage. He looked directly at Tai-Min. Cadet Tai-Min, please stand. Tai-Min rose, feeling hundreds of eyes on him. You scored highest in the practical examination by a margin so large we had to verify the results 3 times, Veltros said. More importantly, you demonstrated the core principle of the Galactic Defense Academy, that warriors protect each other, not just themselves. He paused. Your performance will be studied by future cadets as an example of tactical creativity, resource management, and leadership. Congratulations. The hall erupted in applause. Tai-Min felt his face flush. He had not done it for recognition. He had just done what seemed right. After the assembly, Veltros approached the 3 humans. I need to ask you something, the instructor said. Is Cadet Tai-Min exceptional for a human, or is this normal for your species? Hana and Yuri exchanged glances. Hana answered carefully. Tai-Min is very good at this. But what he did? Making weapons from his environment, seeing resources everywhere, adapting constantly, that is pretty normal for humans. It is how we survived on Earth, how we built civilizations, how we eventually reached the stars. Yeah, Yuri added. Back home, this is just called camping. Veltros's mandibles clicked in the Krellian expression of deep thought. Camping. You have a recreational activity based on survival skills? Most human children learn basic improvisation by age 10, Hana confirmed. Making fire without matches. Building shelters from branches. Finding food and water. It is just what we do. The instructor was quiet for a long moment. Then perhaps, he said slowly, we have much to learn from humanity. 3 months later, the Academy's curriculum had been updated. Human cadets now taught improvisation courses. Tai-Min found himself instructing classes of alien cadets fascinated by human adaptability. In one session, a crystalline cadet asked, But how do you see these possibilities? When I look at a stick, I see a stick. You see a spear, a club, a lever, a tool. How? Tai-Min thought about the question carefully. You are thinking about what things are, he finally answered. Humans think about what things could be. A stick is just wood. But wood can be carved, sharpened, weighted, combined with other materials. It has potential. He picked up the stick in question and began demonstrating. Everything has potential. The key is learning to see it. Not what is, what could be. The cadets watched, absorbing the lesson. This human philosophy was spreading through the academy like wildfire. Species that had relied on natural advantages for millennia were learning to think like humans, creatively, adaptively, resourcefully. In the Academy Museum, a new exhibit had been added. 47 weapons crafted by hand from jungle materials were displayed behind transparent aluminum. Cadets often stopped to study them, marveling at the creativity and craftsmanship. The plaque read, "Improvised arsenal created by Cadet Taimin Human during practical examination cycle 2247. When Instructor Veltros said, "Improvise a weapon," most cadets crafted one tool in 2 days. Cadet Taimin created this entire armory in the same period using only environmental resources. This achievement demonstrates humanity's core evolutionary advantage, the ability to see potential in everything and create solutions from nothing. These weapons represent not superior strength or natural gifts, but superior adaptability and creativity, qualities that make humanity one of the most formidable species in the galaxy. Taimin sometimes stopped by the exhibit during his off hours, looking at the weapons under glass. They seemed crude now, compared to the refined techniques he had learned since, but they represented something important. They proved that the greatest weapon was not what you were born with. It was what you could imagine. And no species in the galaxy imagined quite like humans did.